Thank you all for being here. The E-rate program. The E-rate program is a program that is now 20 years old. I am the House author of it in the 1996 Telecom Act. And what it does is it provides $4 billion a year for internet access for rural schools, for inner city schools, for libraries. That's how, in many instances, any of these schools were able to be online. When that law passed, only 14% of classrooms had internet access. And you know the communities that had it, the wealthier communities, right? So if you're going to democratize access, if you're going to close the digital divide, then you need programs like that. So, Mr. Bloomfield, Ms. Bloomfield, rather, does the NTCA support the E-rate program?
So NTCA has long been a proponent of ensuring that every school and library has access to sustainable and affordable broadband. You know, in our communities, our schools are the lifeblood. And, you know, the folks who run my small communication providers, their kids go to those schools, their grandchildren go to those schools. So it's really, really important to ensure that that rural fiber gap is filled. It's really important.
Would you oppose cuts in the E-rate program?
The only concern we would have, Senator, is when E-rate money is used to overbuild existing fiber. So we look at that and say, if you've already got a school, a rural school that has a fiber network, in most of my communities, it's one of their anchor institutions. So to use that money that can go so much further to actually ensure affordability for these schools, to actually build their own fiber network, we think that's inefficient. When you've already got that fiber connection, to have two fiber connections, one supported by two different universal service programs, I would take issue with that. But I think the core of the E-rate program remains to be critical.
Apart from that, you would wholeheartedly support E-rate?
We are supportive.
Okay, great. Any other comments on E-rate?
Nope, that is all I have to share with you.
Thank you. And we have more than 60 mayors representing communities across the country who have sent a letter to the President and congressional leaders calling for broadband investment to be a part of the infrastructure package. We have the letters that are here, and I ask unanimous consent, Mr. Chairman, that these letters be included in the record.
Without objection.
Thank you. I appreciate it. And I also ask for unanimous consent to enter into the record a letter from the Schools, Health, Libraries, Broadband Coalition, also supporting greater broadband investment for schools, libraries, and healthcare providers. I have these letters here, too.
Without objection again.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We already have a template for success. In 2009 in Western Massachusetts, we actually received $45 million as part of the Recovery Act to build 1,200 miles of fiber optic cable connecting 120 communities to broadband, 400,000 households and businesses. When people think of Massachusetts, they don't think rural. They don't understand that a third of the state is trees once you get past Boston and Worcester. And we have the same issues that any other state would have. And so we thank you for that. And to the mayor of Miami, climate change, resilience, infrastructure. We've got a problem in Boston. We're now talking over the next 40 years, how do we build a huge blockade out in Boston Harbor to stop, you know, what is happening with the rising tides. The Gulf of Maine, which is Boston Harbor, and et cetera, is the fastest warming body of water in the world. So water expands, and the tides are getting higher. The storms more intense, and as a result, the impact is going to be greater. Can you talk about Miami, the impact, and what you might expect or hope from the federal government in any infrastructure package that would help your city?
Thank you, Senator, and I appreciate your Boston accent. If I listen to you more, I'm going to get mine back, because I'm from Boston.
What high school?
I actually grew up as a kid there, went to Edward Devotion in Brookline, in Coolidge Corner.
Yeah.
I was born in Needham.
Great.
So I hear your Boston accent, and I feel very comfortable.
Thank you.
And
of
let
course, the word go forth that a new generation of leaders in Miami
of course,
have a correct accent.
Of course. If you went into my office, you'd see a lifeline mural of President Kennedy at his inauguration with those famous words above. Yeah. And, of course, his house was right around the corner from mine, where I grew up. Thank you for your great question. I was elected mayor of Miami Beach 2013. And at that time, some of our main roads were underwater constantly. And by the way, during sunny days. As you can imagine, very unnerving for residents, for visitors, for investors. Some people get swept into office. I always say I got floated into office in Miami Beach, and I said, we're going to come up with a plan. There's no book written. There's no city has ever tackled what we have done. But what we did is we assembled all our engineers together, and we said, let's get on it, whatever it may be. We began raising roads, putting in pumps, raising seawalls, and making sure that these areas no longer would be underwater. Now, under no circumstances we declare victory against Mother Nature, because as you know in Boston, it continues to rise. But what we've had to do is we've had to utilize our own funding. We raised our stormwater fees. We went out and raised money through bond issues. And by the way, as you can imagine, everyone here, a lot of the elected officials, it's not fun to get into office and say, I'm going to raise your taxes. It's one of the first things you did. But I said, listen, I want to be the mayor of Miami Beach. I don't want to be the mayor of Atlantis, okay? So we're going to do what we have to do. So the issue for us, of course, is how do we ever get federal funding? We didn't. We found, same way as when you want to do a light rail or transportation, the process is so overwhelming, so staggering. You can imagine with something that's happened before, but with something that's never happened before, like sea level rise, it was very challenging, and we have not received federal funding. What we need is to have something in an infrastructure bill that allows coastal communities. Miami Beach is a poster child, but the fact of the matter is it's happening in Boston, like you, man. And I know my friend Mayor Walsh is dealing with it as well. We have to come up with a way to make our cities resilient, because when you're on the coast, you know, your future may not be assured. And we're learning as we go. We're not experts, but we think that it requires money. That's what it comes down to.
Yeah, and my hope is that when we do an infrastructure bill, that we, like broadband, think about these infrastructure investments as well. It's always better to start out where you're going to be forced to wind up anyway. It's always better that way, so that we make the investment so that in the end, we're protected against the inevitable. Either we reduce greenhouse gases or we increase the size of the walls. Okay, but you don't really have a choice. You have to go one way or the other. And in some places, it's already too late. You're going to have to go in both directions, and Miami is the perfect example.